I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing something like this, but here we are. My name's Dave, and I've been with my wife, Lisa, for over 10 years. We have a daughter, Emily, who's about to start her freshman year at college. At first, everything seemed normal. Lisa was the same bitchy, sharp-tongued woman I married, controlling, quick to lie, yet making it look like she was just doing her best for the family. But lately, I noticed small things that didn't sit right. Little changes in her behavior, like she'd come home late meeting friends, or her phone always being glued to her hand. She's the kind of person who gets bitchy if I even ask where she's been or who she's talking to. She'd brush it off with some snarky comment about how I mind too much, that I'm insecure. But I knew her too well. Something was off. She'd become more secretive, more defensive. She'd hide her phone, lock it when I entered the room, and her texts started to feel different, more flirtatious, more secretive. I brushed it off for a while, trying to convince myself I was just paranoid, that I was reading into things. But then the small signs turned into bigger red flags. One night I was home alone doing some work in the living room when I noticed her phone buzzing constantly. It was on the kitchen counter, and I saw the screen light up with a text thread I didn't recognize. It was from some name I'd never seen before, Jamie, I think. I hesitated, then decided to look. At first it was just casual, seemingly innocent messages, compliments, some jokes, but then I saw plans being made, talking about meeting up later, keeping it secret, making it special. My stomach clenched. The messages weren't on the family calendar or her schedule. She'd hidden that part just like everything else. I felt a cold rush of anger and betrayal. How could she hide this from me? I kept reading, trying to find some explanation, but there was nothing good. Just her lie after lie, covering up her affair with the college admissions counselor, Thomas. That bastard. Turns out, she'd been cheating on me with him for months, probably even longer. I knew she was stressed about Emily's college applications, but I never suspected she'd go this far. She'd always been bitchy, yes, but I never thought she'd cheat behind my back. The worst part, I saw the texts planning their meetings, even talking about how special she felt with him, how he made her feel alive again. And I was there, just clueless, feeding into her lies. I didn't sleep that night, just lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling numb. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I could have been so blind. I thought about everything I'd done for her, working my ass off to give her a good life, making sure Emily had everything she needed, and this was how she repaid me, with another man. And not just some random guy, Thomas, the college counselor. Yeah, the guy who was supposed to help Emily get into college, and instead, he was helping himself to my wife's bed. The next morning, I decided I had to confront her. I didn't want her to keep lying to my face anymore. I'd seen enough. I waited until she woke up, then called her into the living room. Her bitchy attitude was already in full swing. She looked at me like I was an annoyance, snapping and frowning. I threw the phone on the table and said, "Who the hell is Thomas? And what the hell are you doing with him?" Her eyes widened for a second, then she straightened up, trying to act like she didn't know what I was talking about. She blinked a few times, then spat out some bullshit about how it's none of my business, that I'm just paranoid, that I need to grow up. I stared at her, feeling every ounce of the betrayal and rage boiling inside me. How dare she lie? How dare she pretend nothing was happening? I told her I saw the messages. I told her I knew about her affair. She scoffed, called me insecure, said I was overreacting, that Thomas was just helping Emily with her college prep, and that I was imagining things. But I knew better. I knew she'd been lying all along, hiding her betrayal, trying to keep up appearances like everything was fine. And the thing that hurt the most, her dismissive attitude, like I was nothing, like she owned me and I was supposed to just accept her cheating. That moment shattered whatever trust I had left. My head was spinning, with anger, disappointment, and a strange sadness. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get cheated on, especially not by someone I loved and trusted. It felt like the ground beneath me was giving way. I looked at her, her bitchy smirk, her eyes full of lies, and I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just let this slide, not after everything. I needed to figure out my next move, how I was going to deal with this, how I was going to make her pay for what she did. But I also felt lost, confused, like I'd lost part of myself in that moment. After that confrontation, everything changed. I couldn't look at Lisa the same way, not after I'd seen her lie so effortlessly, her eyes cold and dismissive like I was some inconvenience she had to tolerate. The betrayal hit me deep, but I knew I had to keep my head clear. I started digging, looking for more evidence, trying to figure out how long this had been going on, how many other lies she'd told. I went through her phone again, this time more carefully. I found more messages, texts exchanged late at night, flirtatious. Emojis, plans to meet in secret places. There was even a meeting scheduled at some fancy hotel last weekend. I couldn't believe it. She'd been lying to my face about her business trips, her girls' nights, all the while cheating with Thomas. I felt sick. I kept asking myself why she'd do this, why she'd risk everything, us, Emily, her reputation, for this piece of shit. The thing that made it worse, she was so bitchy about everything, blaming everyone else for her problems, always lying, always twisting the truth. It was like dealing with a damn professional manipulator. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. I didn't want to just storm out and leave her, no, I wanted payback. I needed her to feel what it was like to be betrayed, to be humiliated. I decided I'd set a trap, see how far she'd go, and then hit her where it hurt. I started planning my revenge. I kept quiet around Emily, who was blissfully unaware and still excited about college, and I kept my eyes open for the right moment. I wanted her to know I wasn't some fool, some guy she could lie to and walk over. One thing I did was dig into her emails, her social media, and her calendar. I wanted to know if she was still seeing him, if there were more meetings I didn't know about. I also hired a private investigator, something I never thought I'd do, but I needed solid proof. That pie found out she'd been meeting Thomas at that hotel, that she'd been lying about her whereabouts. It was all confirmed. I had everything I needed to make her regret this. I didn't just want to leave her. I wanted her to feel the pain she'd caused. I started compiling everything, the texts, the hotel receipts, the photos from the pie, and I waited for the right moment. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, pretending everything was fine. She'd get snippy, accuse me of being paranoid, say I was jealous or insecure. She'd call me a psycho if I even hinted I knew about her affair. But I could see her cracking under the pressure, her bitchy facade slipping now and then. She'd lash out at Emily, call her stupid for being naive, and I could tell she was trying to keep her shit together but failing. It was a roller coaster of emotions, anger, betrayal, sadness, and a strange sense of relief that I'd caught her. But I also felt guilty. Part of me wondered if I missed the signs before, if I failed somehow as a husband and father. Still, I told myself I was doing this for our family, for Emily's future. Once I had all the evidence, I knew I couldn't just confront her blindly. I had to be smart, calm, and calculated. I couldn't let her manipulate her way out of it again. So I set the trap. I invited her to dinner, told her I wanted to talk, that I had something important to say. She was bitchy as ever, snappy and dismissive, but I played along. I let her think she was in control until I dropped the bomb. I pulled out my phone and played the recordings of her private conversations with Thomas, showed her the hotel receipts, and laid out everything I'd uncovered. Her face twisted with rage and panic. She started to lie, to deny everything, but I had the proof. Her reaction. She went ballistic. Called me insecure, a jealous psycho, said I was ruining her reputation, that I was the one at fault for snooping. She screamed, called me a controlling bastard, told me I was overreacting, but I didn't care anymore. I saw her for what she was, a manipulative, cheating bitch who had taken everything for granted. That moment marked the end of our facade, the end of the lie that was our marriage. I knew then I had to decide. Do I stay and try to fix this, or do I cut her loose for good? After she flew into that rage, I knew I had to act quickly. Lisa was clearly losing it, throwing around accusations and trying to spin her way out of it. I could see her breathless, furious, eyes darting around like a cornered animal. But I was done being played. I told her she could keep lying, but I'd seen enough. I told her I was done, that I couldn't trust her anymore, and that she'd crossed a line I'd never thought she would. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she spat that I was an insecure loser, that I was just jealous because she was better than me, smarter than me, and that I'd ruin everything by being so paranoid. Honestly, I felt a Mix of relief and disgust. Relief because I finally knew the truth, and disgust because I realized how much I'd let her manipulate me over the years. The girl I married was gone, replaced by this bitchy, selfish person who would cheat and lie without remorse. I also felt a deep sadness, sad for Emily, who's about to start college and doesn't deserve her mother's bullshit, and sad for myself for falling for her lies so long. But mostly, I was just furious. Furious at her, furious at myself for not seeing it sooner. I told her I was leaving. I told her I'd be taking Emily with me, that she had to face the consequences of her actions. Her reaction was almost laughable. She told me I was ruining everything, that I was a jealous control freak, that I was destroying her life because I couldn't handle her being more successful than me. She accused me of trying to ruin her, as if I'd planned all this just to punish her. That's when I realized she's just a master at twisting things around to make herself the victim. But I didn't care about her victim act anymore. I wanted out. I did respond to her anymore after that. Instead, I started packing up my stuff, planning my next moves. I contacted a lawyer, prepared for the inevitable fallout, and made sure Emily was on my side. She was too young to understand everything fully, but she could see her mother was turning into someone else, someone she didn't respect anymore. I told Emily the truth in a way that was honest but age-appropriate, just enough to let her know her mother was the person she thought she was. That was a hard conversation, but necessary. I promised her I'd do everything I could to keep her safe from her mom's lies and manipulations. The plan was to leave quietly at first, get a place for myself, and then figure out what to do about Lisa. She kept trying to call, to text, to plead, some sort of desperate attempt to salvage whatever was left. But I was done. I was tired of her bitchy attitude, her lies, her cheating, and most of all, her complete lack of respect for me and Emily. I blocked her number, turned off my phone, and went dark for a few days. I needed space to breathe, to think clearly about what I was going to do next. In those first few days, I kept replaying everything. The signs I missed, her lies, the texts, the hotel receipts. It all felt like a punch in the gut, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity now. I realized I'd been a fool to think I could fix her, to think that love alone would be enough. No, this was about respect, something she had completely lost. I kept asking myself how someone I loved could do this to me, to Emily, to our family. But more than anything, I knew I had to focus on moving forward. I had to rebuild my life, even if that meant starting over. I didn't want to let her win, not after everything she'd done. I wanted to get my life back, to find some happiness again, even if it meant walking away from the woman I once loved. I knew I had to get her out of my system, out of my mind, and do what was best for Emily. I told myself I'd be stronger this time. I'd learn from this mess. And I'd make damn sure that if she ever tried to pull something like this again, I'd be ready. So here I am, trying to piece everything together. I've got the evidence, I've got the plan, and I've got a very clear view of what I don't want anymore. But I won't lie. There's still that ache inside, that feeling of betrayal that never really goes away. Still, I know I have to be stronger than her bitchy, manipulative ways. That's the only way I can move forward. And honestly, I hope this serves as a warning for anyone else out there. Trust is fragile, and if someone shows you who they are, or more importantly, who they're willing to lie and cheat, you better listen. Because once it's broken, it's damn hard to fix. The days that followed were like a blur. I moved out, found a small apartment a few miles away, not too far from Emily's college campus. I knew I needed space, not just physically but mentally and emotionally. Still, every hour that passed, I kept replaying everything. The lies, the betrayals, the moments I missed. It was like a sick game I'd been played without even realizing it. And suddenly, I was the one left picking up the pieces. I stayed mostly quiet, trying to process everything. My mind kept circling back to the betrayal. Lisa was the kind of woman who always had a snarky comment ready, who could be bitchy in seconds if she didn't get her way. She was manipulative, quick-witted, and had a way of twisting every situation to her advantage. That's what made her so dangerous. And now I saw her true colors: cold, selfish, and deceitful. She wasn't the woman I married, she was someone else entirely. I also worried about Emily. She was young, naive, and honestly still so trusting. I didn't want her growing up thinking her mother was some vindictive, manipulative liar. I sat her down one afternoon, told her that her mom was going through some things, and that I was leaving to give her some space. I wanted her to understand that we still loved her, but her mother was the person she thought she was. Emily looked at me with big eyes full of confusion, but I promised her I'd do everything I could to protect her from Lisa's bullshit. That was hard, telling her she was in the middle of this mess. But I knew honesty was better than lies. Meanwhile, Lisa kept trying to reach me, sending passive-aggressive texts, crying, even some bitchy messages blaming me for ruining her life. I ignored most of it. I'd heard enough lies and manipulations. I wasn't going to fall into her game again. I even hired a divorce lawyer just in case, knowing that once I had enough evidence, I'd be ready to file. I wasn't planning on letting her walk all over me anymore. One afternoon, out of nowhere, Lisa showed up at my new place. She looked terrible, pale, angry, and desperate. She barged in without warning, demanding to know why I was doing this, why I was attacking her. She was bitchy as usual, but also unhinged. She yelled that I was ruining everything, that I should just forgive her and move on. I stared at her, feeling nothing but contempt. I told her she had no right to come into my life and accuse me of anything, that I'd seen enough and I was done being her punching bag, that I'd be going through with the divorce, and she'd better get ready for the consequences. Her eyes flashed with fury, but I kept my ground. I told her that I knew everything about Thomas, the hotel, the lies, and her manipulations. I warned her that if she thought she could keep lying and cheating her way out of this, she'd be in for a rude awakening. She scoffed, called me jealous, pathetic, and stormed out of my apartment like a spoiled brat. I closed the door behind her, feeling more relief than I'd felt in months. I'd finally taken control of my life again, even if it hurt like hell. That night I laid in bed, replaying everything that had happened, trying to make sense of it all. I kept asking myself how Lisa, with all her bitchy attitude and manipulative lies, could do this to us. To Emily, to me. The betrayal cut so deep that sometimes I wondered if I'd ever trust anyone again. But deep down, I knew I had to move on. I had to rebuild not just my life, but my sense of self. I realized that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to repair. And that my best shot at peace was to cut her out completely and focus on what matters, Emily and myself. I decided I wouldn't let her sabotage my future. I'd seen her for what she was, an unfaithful, manipulative woman who thought she could get away with anything. Well, she couldn't. Not anymore. I was done chasing after her apologies, her excuses, her lies. I was done being the fool who believed in fairy tales. It was time to face reality and take control, and honestly, that felt damn good. It was the first step toward finally being free from her bitchy grip, and maybe, just maybe, starting over with a clear head and a stronger heart. After that night at my place, I felt like a weight had been lifted, yet at the same time I was more aware than ever of how much damage had been done. The betrayal had shredded something inside me, and I knew I wouldn't just bounce back overnight. Still, I was determined to move forward. I started focusing on Emily, making sure she felt supported and loved, even if her mother's shadow still loomed over us. I kept her busy with school, friends, and new routines, trying to shield her from Lisa's latest manipulations. I also threw myself into organizing everything. I had stacks of evidence, texts, hotel receipts, emails from the pie gathered and ready. I knew I couldn't just walk away without solid proof, especially if I wanted to fight for custody or at least make sure Lisa didn't try to ruin me legally. I was angry, yes, but I also knew I had to stay smart. Revenge wasn't just about hurting her. It was about protecting myself and Emily from her toxic BS. Over the next few weeks, Lisa's calls and texts became less frequent and more desperate. Her bitchy tone was replaced with one of pure panic, trying to manipulate her way back into my life. She'd send messages about how she still loved us, how she'd change, how I was just jealous or insecure. I just ignored her. I knew her game. She was just trying to guilt me into taking her back to make me doubt myself. But I saw through it. I wasn't falling for her lies again. I met with my lawyer who advised me on the best course of action. We discussed divorce, custody arrangements, and how to protect Emily. Honestly, I was prepared for the worst, but I also wanted to be fair. If Lisa was willing to admit her mistakes and actually try to make amends, maybe there was a chance for some kind of resolution. But I wasn't naive. From everything I'd seen, I didn't trust her to be honest or respectful. That bitchy attitude of hers was still there, just masked by tears and false apologies. The most surprising thing came when I finally decided to confront her face to face at her house. I wanted her to see I wasn't backing down. I told her I had enough, that I had all the proof, and I was ready to take this further. Her reaction was classic Lisa, full of bitchy defensiveness, claiming I was trying to ruin her, that I was the real problem. She bawled, accused me of being an insecure control freak, and said she'd never forgive me if I went through with the divorce. But honestly, I didn't care anymore. I told her that I'd already made my decision and that I'd be fighting for full custody of Emily. What struck me was how she tried to turn things around, making herself out to be the victim, saying I'd destroyed her life. That's her usual tactic: twist reality, blame everyone else, and act like she's the innocent party. But I was done buying her bullshit. I knew her game. She was a manipulative, bitchy woman who thought she could get away with anything. Not this time. I told her I was done playing her sick games, that I'd do whatever it took to protect Emily from her lies and manipulations. She yelled, called me a jealous psycho, but I just looked her in the eyes and said, "It's over." That meeting was a turning point. I realized I'd been wasting so much energy trying to hold onto a broken marriage with a woman who only cared about herself. I decided to file for divorce and full custody. I wanted Emily safe, away from Lisa's manipulations and lies. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I also knew I'd come too far to turn back now. I had to rebuild my life piece by piece, without her bitchy, selfish influence dragging me down. In the quiet moments, I kept thinking about what I'd learned. Trust is fragile. People show you who they really are, and if they lie or cheat, you have to listen. I also understood that revenge isn't just about hurting someone, it's about protecting yourself and your loved ones. Lisa's betrayal taught me that I have to stand up and fight for what's right, even if it costs me everything. I don't regret exposing her, even if it's been messy and painful. It's made me realize I deserve honesty, respect, and someone who actually values me. I know I won't forget what she did, but I'm also not going to let it define me. I've got a second chance now, to rebuild, to heal, and maybe in time to trust again. Because the truth is, no matter how bitchy or manipulative someone is, the only way to survive their betrayal is to face it head on and take control of your own life. That's what I've learned, and honestly, it's what I wish more people would realize before they get caught up in someone else's lies. The weeks turned into months, and I finally felt like I was starting to breathe again. The anger and betrayal still lingered, but I was learning how to cope. Emily was adapting better, and I could see her becoming more confident, more herself. I stayed firm in my decision to divorce Lisa, and I pursued full custody. The court battles weren't easy. Lisa was bitchy, manipulative, and always trying to twist the narrative to her favor. But I had the evidence, I had my lawyer, and I had the truth on my side. Slowly, the system worked in our favor and I was granted custody. Lisa's protests and manipulations didn't sway the judge. The finality hit hard when Lisa moved out, still bitching and blaming everyone else for her mistakes. She left angrily, full of accusations, her usual manipulative tone, but with less of the control she thought she had. Emily and I finally had some peace. An uneasy peace, sure, but peace nonetheless. As I watched her drive away that day, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I'd lost my wife, yes, but I'd gained my life back, and more importantly, I'd gained my daughter's trust again. Looking back, I realize I've learned some hard lessons. Trust is everything, and once it's broken, it's nearly impossible to repair. Women like Lisa, who are manipulative, bitchy, and liars, only care about themselves. They'll lie, cheat, and blame everyone else to cover their own ass. I think the biggest realization for me was that not everyone deserves forgiveness or a second chance. Some people are just better off out of your life. You have to recognize when someone is toxic and walk away, no matter how much it hurts. I also learned that revenge isn't about getting back at someone. It's about protecting yourself and your loved ones. Exposing Lisa's affair, gathering evidence, standing my ground in court. That was all about making sure she couldn't ruin things further. I don't regret it. If anything, I wish I'd seen the signs earlier, but you live and learn. Now I see clearly what I want: honesty, respect, and people who value me for who I am. No more bitchy, manipulative women, no more lies, just a fresh start. As for Emily, she's starting her new chapter in college, and I couldn't be prouder of her. We're rebuilding our relationship, step by step, learning how to trust again in a healthier way. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this: I won't let her or anyone else tear me down again. I've been through hell, but I've come out stronger, more aware of what real loyalty and honesty look like. That's my story. It's messy and painful, but it's real, if theirs. One thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: never ignore the signs. If someone consistently lies, manipulates, or cheats, walk away. Because once the trust is gone, all that's left is pain and regret. Protect yourself, stand your ground, and never settle for less than you deserve. I did, and while it's been a tough journey, I finally feel like I'm on the right path. And honestly, that's all I could ask for.